My name is Jen Bowser, Sustainability Engagement Manager in Resource Management and Planning, and Staff Association Chair-elect. On behalf of the Staff Association and Human Resources, I'd like to welcome you to Cabinet Conversations. Cabinet Conversations is a series of conversations with campus leaders to help us to get to know them on a more personal level and to hear directly from them on important issues that are impacting the campus. This new series was developed out of responses from the previous Staff at Work survey, the engagement survey conducted by the Council of UC Staff Assemblies, also known as CUSA, and an Idea of Way campaign that helps in developing the Staff Association's strategic plan. Today, we're speaking with the Vice Chancellor of Resource Management and Planning, Gary Matthews. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. We have taken all of the necessary precautions to prevent against Zoom bombing, but in the event that an instance does occur, we will end the session immediately and follow up with you on how we can continue this conversation at a later date. Questions were submitted beforehand, but if you would like to submit a question, go ahead and do so in the chat. We'll try to get through as many questions as time will allow today. And lastly, if you want to check the chat, there's recommendations for how you can have optimal viewing settings. So ideally that you're seeing myself and Gary either side by side or stacked. So without further ado, let's get started. Good morning, Gary. How are you?
Good morning, Jen. Very well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me, and thanks to the Staff Association for having this very wonderful event.
And thank you for joining us. It's so good to see you. I think the last time we saw each other in person might have been in January, so it's been quite some time.
It sure has, although yes.
I have seen you in this setting many a times at town halls and such.
Virtually, yes.
And so, how are you doing? What have you been doing for the last 6 months? What have they been like for you?
Well, I'll be candid. Many of my colleagues have told me, as well as some of you, that we're all working harder than ever, and I think we are. I think that the Zoom and working remotely has kept many of us safe, which is extremely important, but at the same time, it can be a little intrusive. So one of the nice things about some of the interactions that I've had with particularly my staff is I've met their children, I've met their pets, because I'm in their homes, and I wasn't necessarily invited into their homes. So we've tried to make it as positive as possible for everybody. But it's been a learning exercise for sure.
And how have you been spending your non-work time? Social distancing?
Well, I social distance. It's my wife and I. And it's rare that we'll go out. We'll go out to shop, and lately, yes, we've gone out to restaurants and we've picked up food. We certainly ensure that we have our masks and that we continue to do the social distancing. But our approach has been to stay at home as much as possible, and we spend Zoom time working, and then we have family who are all in New York, so we Zoom with our family. And to be candid, we've seen our family more on Zoom than we have in real time, so it's been pretty nice in that regard.
That's wonderful. And do you have any hobbies?
No, I mean, quite candidly, I would have said 6-7 months ago that I travel. Well, I can't really travel. So I certainly have been doing a lot of reading, certainly on the pandemic as well as politics in the news. So I'll try to stay as apolitical as I can. I'll tell everybody they need to vote, and I'll say it several times. But that's my hobby. I read quite a bit.
Tell us a little bit more about your personal and professional background. You did mention you have family in New York. You are from New York. So how did you get to San Diego?
Go West, young man. And I wasn't that young when I did it. I had worked for the State University of New York at the Stony Brook campus for 26 years. So I started my career there. I started as an activities coordinator in the student union and worked my way up through probably about 10 different jobs, whether it was the director of HR, at that time it was affirmative action officer, now it's EDI in California. And I had some really positive mentors and assignments that also had me gravitate towards facilities management. So I had reached a point at Stony Brook where I had come literally from the bottom and had gone as high as I was going to go on that campus as an assistant vice president for facilities. So many of the functions I have now are things I had in New York. I was for lack of a better term, the chief operating officer, or the chief engineer rather, for a 500-bed hospital health sciences center, a million square feet. We thought that was hot in those days, and now when I look at the square feet of this campus, it's just amazing. You know, we build more in a couple of years than I managed throughout my career, but it was a journey where I had gotten to a point where I really couldn't do any much more, and quite honestly, people, at least in New York, put you in a box, and they said, this is all you can do. Now, I had done a lot, but I also felt in my early 50s that I could do so much more. So I worked with a headhunter, had a position that was offered to me in, I'll tell you the school, Texas A&M, and quite frankly, that was not a place for me to live. I saw everybody carrying guns, and I'm going, what's up with that? And I was told, well, there are a lot of critters here. And I said, well, maybe you won't get me to come live here. So I think I waited it out, worked with the headhunter, had some interviews at Irvine. Irvine wasn't quite it. And I said, if San Diego ever opens up, let me know. And within 3 or 4 months, it did. So I moved to San Diego, and I can tell you the date. It was on Valentine's Day, 2002. My wife never let me forget that I left New York to come to California. Without her, she ended her career, an academic year, in June or July, and then she joined me later. But it was interesting, and I'm still paying for that move, by the way. So it was a real challenge in terms of learning the different cultures, because New York is a different place from California. I really hadn't heard the term or lived the term surf's up, but when it's up here, people don't necessarily come to work, and they go surfing. And sometimes they'll go surfing before they come to work, which is it really shows that people really enjoy the environment here. So I think that was really the move. It was time to do something different.
And do you have any advice for staff who might want to become leaders in your field?
Yeah, I think that when I look back over my career and others, I really believe that you benefit from being more of a generalist than a specialist. Because if you're the specialist, people tend not to want you to move anywhere else. So if you're more of a generalist, you have an opportunity to get a better understanding of what management is like in different settings. So I worked in student affairs, the administration, finance, as well as HR and affirmative action. None of that was the direct career ladder. I don't think that there are really direct career ladders anymore. And I do think that you have to be flexible and willing to take, sometimes it's a risk in the sense that you can take the easy way and sort of glide through, or sometimes you put your hand up and say, okay, I'll take that on. And sometimes those opportunities come with a lot of potential to fail, but when you do it and you do it right, there's so much that you learn. Even if you fail, you learn.
So we're going to transition from some personal questions we just asked to some campus questions.
Okay.
Given the news lately of the wastewater testing efforts, we're interested to hear, was this a new frontier for RMP staff to explore? What can you tell us about the wastewater testing?
I have to be candid. Throughout my career, it's close to 40 years, I've been playing with poop. So I had sewage backups in New York and had to reline sewage pipes. And at UC San Diego, we test the water. There are some tests that are done routinely for the sewage outflow to ensure that, for instance, waste chemicals from labs are not over a certain level. So we've been doing that for years. Have we directly tested poop? No. But I think the new approach has certainly shown the advantage of it. We are working closely with the scientists. And that's one thing I will say about UC San Diego. You have opportunities at this campus that other campuses don't provide in terms of folks from the operational side working with our faculty. So some of the things that we've learned from the wastewater testing really have come from the scientists that we're working with, and they in turn are working with us to, to identify pull sites. Where do you pull the samples from? Can you set it up so that you don't need to go down into a deep access hole or manhole, as it used to be called? And I think that we're all learning. And when you talk about best practices, those best practices are being informed by some of the very best faculty and PIs right here on the campus.
And how else are you seeing staff in resource management and planning innovate and find creative solutions to challenges that we've faced over the past few months?
Well, I'm smiling because for years I had been an advocate for remote work, but only very few people were given that opportunity. And I have seen that our staff are incredibly adaptable. They're focused on getting the mission accomplished. And for RMP, as you know, we provide services to the entire campus, and the campus represents a small city. So even some of the adaptations that we've done to keep people safe, whether it's the cleaning, the disinfecting, that's all done with a team that focuses on the science, and it also focuses on applying those best practices. So we've changed air handling systems, and unfortunately, there's a good and a bad with that, because our load management systems really reduce our energy consumption, and that's not happening right now because we've included a program where we use 100% outside fresh air to provide airflow, primarily in the larger buildings that have HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning systems, because at least throughout the last several months, it's been clear, even though the CDC issued a statement this week and withdrew it about aerosols, that there is some airborne quality, if the virus has a quality, to the virus's spread. So we've looked at changing filters, air handling units, and even some micro units for air filtration. So I think that's all been informed by the focus that our staff has to provide the very best, and it's been a very rewarding experience. I've been on the campus a few times, and I've seen, for instance, I've seen our custodians working and keeping places clean, even though people haven't been there for months. If you let it go, then you have issues. Our grounds workers, throughout the last several weeks of heat waves and power issues, we'll say, our folks in the plant generated enough electricity to feed the grid. And that's because people have this can-do attitude, and they're willing to make often personal sacrifices to get things done. So whether they're designing signs, putting up information, sending out a variety of educational outreach programs, we've kind of expanded what we do and how we do it. We've known for years that we were pretty good technically, didn't communicate that well, and so we're really picking up on the communications, working with campus communications, but also ensuring that we've got a team set up to translate the technical to things that people can understand. So many of the signs, if not all of the signs for COVID across the campus, were developed and created by our in-house staff based on the science, based on their understanding that we had to provide the very best environment for our we say customers, it's faculty, staff, and students, patients, and visitors.
And I would agree with you. We have a lot of dedicated staff on our campus who really take a lot of pride in their work, and it shows. You can see it.
Yes.
Your favorite topic of parking. In what ways has parking and transportation adjusted operations in light of the current environment? And with that, what's important for staff to know?
I'm optimistic that remote working is here to stay. Doesn't mean everybody will be working remotely 100% of the time, but I think it's clear that it's viable, it can be done. What that translates to is we've adjusted our schedules, we've adjusted how we manage our shuttles. So the shuttles at the very beginning were retrofitted with plexiglass shields, enter from the rear. They're being disinfected in different ways. So it's cleaning then disinfection on a routine basis every day. And we're also using our micro mobility carts, Triton Rides and Triton Mobility to transport those with either temporary or long-term disabilities. And we still have some folks on the campus, even though the population has been diminished. And I think that longer term, I think we're going to see greater availability of parking. So we've adjusted parking so that folks can park closer in and not park in the Regents lots or the 700 lots and then have to shuttle in. So right now, those are and we're also adjusting the rates so that it's really going to be more pay as you use it and pay as you go rather than a monthly fee. And all of that's on the parking and transportation website. And on a routine basis, we assess it. So I won't say every month, but pretty close to see whether we can do something new and innovative. So just this morning, Josh Kavanaugh and I discussed some new additions to commute solutions, and whether we call it a Triton commute club or something different to get people more focused on the alternatives that we have. And public transportation has certainly taken a hit, but many of our folks are still using it. And in terms of the spread of the virus, we haven't discerned any increase in transmission based on public transportation use. Certainly bus drivers in other cities were impacted early on because they don't believe they had the appropriate personal protective equipment. So we've done that for our staff. We're still pushing ahead, as you can see, with light rail. That is finally going to happen soon. I'm not sure when, because I think their schedule may have been pushed back, but January, something like that. The latest will be November of 21. We'll see the first ride. And, I think that light rail will take 5 to 10 years to really reach its maximum, but in maximum in the sense that you'll have opportunities to come from the border really with a straight run. You can come from the 8, get off at Old Town and catch it. And it alleviates, I think, a lot of the potential traffic. But I also think if we combine it with the remote work and scheduling as well as shifts, I think we'll be in much better condition. We've also tried our best wherever we have had parking taken away, which is quite a bit, it's been replaced with structures. So Torrey Pines Living and Learning is about to open, and I believe there are 1,000 to 1,200 spaces there, so slightly more than what we took away. And that's been the goal. If you take, you want to replace with a few more to keep it moving. But we're optimistic because part of our goal for carbon neutrality includes our scope 3 emissions. And so while, yeah, we're building parking, I don't want to overbuild because I really want folks to find alternative ways to get to the campus. And, the light rail, some of my projects, the one thing I failed to mention is sometimes as a manager, you need to be patient. And sometimes the project may take 10, 12 years. So I've had several where it took that long to become a reality. And sometimes you just have to kind of bite it and say, okay, I'll hang in there. But I think when you look at things like light rail for the greater good and long-term, that's going to be highly successful for everybody, access to the institution, as well as our carbon footprint.
And obviously, I talk a lot about, in my job, of people finding alternative ways to get to work. I do hope that the being able to work remotely is really going to help us as well. I had the opportunity to go to campus last Thursday for the first time since we closed mid-March, and I got a flu shot, which everyone should do. Little plug there. Yep. And I had never used the parking app, so I had downloaded it. It was really easy. My first hour was free, and I ended up staying a little bit longer than I expected, so I was able to extend it, and that was really easy. So kudos to the transportation team, because that was really easy, and I think a lot of people will be able to use it. As we're kind of touching upon construction, you know, again, having not been there for 6 months, the campus looked much different to me. Gilman Drive, right around where your office is located, that was much different. I tried parking in Hopkins first, but they were painting the visitor spots, so that didn't work out. But I drove over to Gilman, so I got to see a lot of the campus. What are some of the highlights that you would like to, what are some of the construction projects that you would like to highlight that some of the staff will see when they're coming back to campus, if they are?
Well, I think it's clear, since you saw it in the last couple of weeks, that the campus is kind of torn apart. But I think this is probably the best time to do it because the population is so low. So we did expedite a number of projects. Gilman is one of them. And we're preparing for the arrival of light rail, and there will be, for lack of a better term, an amphitheater there near the engineering building at SME that's there now. And we're completing the design innovation building as part of what I'll call the arrival point to the campus. And part of what will also happen is there will be greater emphasis on walkways, paths, micromobility, bicycling. You've seen the pedestrian bridge, maybe you haven't, that goes into the graduate student housing, the Gilman Bridge, which was part of our negotiation for the light rail. To have the light rail use our land, they built us a bridge, or at least they gave us a good dollar amount for it. So we've got connections that we never had before, and bicycling and pedestrians, skateboards, micromobility are all supported in that. And some of the walkways and paths associated with the arrival point will also have micromobility. There will also be a bus turnaround right at the light rail stop at Design Innovation, so that there'll be a transportation hub there. So I think that overall, we're trying to make, and I'll say it, I think for years the campus was not as people-friendly as it needed to be. We focused on grand design buildings, and some of them are pretty, I'll use another word, but I won't. And the reality is that we didn't really spend as much time on what we call the public realm. So you'll see greater attention to the public realm. San Diego is a wonderful climate, particularly having come from New York, where you had winters that would really be difficult to deal with. And, you know, sitting outside in San Diego is a pleasure, but we really didn't focus on to make it pleasurable. So you'll see more of that. There's also a project that's just about 100% complete on Ridge Walk. And that brings the pedestrian and the micromobility paths together so that we have delineated or defined bike lanes and paths for skateboards, so that people will have a better opportunity to get from point A to point B. And you know, one of the things that I've advocated for years is we've got I believe a 10-minute passing for classes, and maybe it's 15 either way. I don't know that I could go from one side of the campus to the other in 10, 15 minutes unless I had some sort of micro mobility support. So, you know, as much as skateboards and some of the electric scooters can be inappropriately used, if we manage them and, most importantly, give people instruction on how to use them appropriately, I think we'll be fine. So we've done some tests, and we had a group of folks looking at micromobility for over a year. And I know that we just finished much of our information about the organization is on Blink, and you go to Blink and call up RMP, and just this morning I saw a new addition it's in the police department's page or website on micromobility and most importantly bicycles. And it's sort of a informational but also instructional, and it's provided in somewhat of a light way, so it's not overbearing. So if anyone's interested, I'd suggest that they go to the site, because it really gives a good overview of what is and what will be happening in terms of bicycle and micromobility. I think those are the bigger features. Now we have a whole project that is at Hillcrest, where that entire campus is going to have to be rebuilt by 2030. So that's probably the next biggest project. And sometime in the same time period, there will be what we're calling the Theater District Living Learning. So we've got Torrey Pines Living Learning, and then the Theater District near the La Jolla Playhouse, once again on a parking lot right behind Revelle and Keeling Apartments, will be putting in additional housing. Part of our approach is to provide our students with housing that's below market. La Jolla is not the easiest place to live or afford, so it's been difficult for our students to find housing, and there was a commitment made years ago, we're going to increase our housing. And I think when we finish, we will probably have one of the largest housing offerings within the nation, because it's just that important for the living learning environment for our students. So Theater District will hopefully be the next. It's been given to the regents. It's one of those that's still in planning. We'll see if anything happens with it in terms of the market, the climate, in terms of construction. But those are the two biggest projects coming on in the next several years. And we still do quite a bit of rehabs and internal renovations that will continue. I think too, post-COVID, you'll see many changes on the campus. First of all, you'll see the signage, you'll see banners, you'll see things that tell you what you should or should not do, the distancing, the masks, and one person in an elevator, how many people can use the restroom. Some things that you never thought you had to legislate, and it's not legislated as much as these are the things that are going to keep us safe. And I think if we follow those, and most importantly, people will have to be adaptable, because it's almost every day somebody else comes up with some other, oh, well, we need to do this, we need to do that. I believe this week, if it's not today, the state will decide whether San Diego slides back to purple or not. And I don't know what that means anymore, because the business folks, some of them with restaurants and operations that have closed that recently reopened, are saying, well, I'm not going to close. So it's going to be an interesting challenge. And those challenges also impact the campus, because it's really a small city.
You had mentioned the RMP website. There is a statement on the site about equity, diversity, and inclusion. What is the role that RMP is playing in UC San Diego's greater effort around EDI and the strategic plan for inclusive excellence?
So I can certainly talk about our recruitment efforts within RMP, because they've been ongoing for many years. We also have selection committees, for instance, that are diverse in themselves, so that it's not just the supervisor deciding. And years ago, I was approached by someone in an area, I won't mention which one, said, if I have a problem with my supervisor, then I will never get a promotion. I looked at it, they were right. So we've kind of mixed it up in terms of our selection criteria. And I really do believe in hiring students. We have a number of our really outstanding staff members who are alum and former students. And I know you work with students, and these folks are the brightest of the brightest, so why not recruit them? Now, sometimes I feel a little guilty, because I don't want to inhibit someone's personal growth if they're going to be a physician or a top scientist, but at the same time, we hire about 600 or 700 students, and they're given opportunities to do a wealth of things, but most importantly, they have transferable skills. And even if it's to get to work on time, for some, that's a skill, and you need to learn it. So I think that we try our best to develop a pipeline where we, utilize what we have in terms of the departments and what they need to employ students, give them life skills, and then move forward. In a bigger picture, I look at things that are micro, meso, and macro. On the macro level, my journey with the trolley, it's like, oh, so what's the big deal about a trolley? Think about access, public access, and transportation for people who don't have a car or who don't have access the way others do to the institution. But the trolley provides greater access, not only for those that work here, but also those that may come to utilize our programs. So when you look at the bigger picture, it's RMP has supported through our negotiations. The trolley deal was dead up until maybe 12 years ago, where former administrations said they didn't want it on the campus. And I for the life of me, couldn't understand why. And thankfully, we pushed through. We did some really, really good negotiations in terms of transfers of land for access and use rights, and the campus benefited from it. And certainly longer term, people south of the 8 can spend 45 minutes to an hour or more trying to get here every day and face the traffic. Well, you can get on a lightweight car now with Wi-Fi, and maybe not now, but in the next year or so, and not have to worry about it. So I think that opens up a lot of opportunity for those that have been hindered by our location. So that's just one of the mega projects. And we've done some things with the Native American tribes, the Kumeyaay in particular, where they haven't been treated as well as I think they should have historically by the campus. And if it's repatriation of funerary objects and human remains, we've tried to foster that. We have some opportunities to really focus on the fact that the Kumeyaay were here first, and the land that the campus is built on was in fact inhabited by the Kumeyaay. Now, I believe that they say they don't own the land, but they were here, and we need to recognize that as a campus. So those are some of the things that we do, and I'm personally involved with in terms of EDI, mega, macro, I won't say mega, I'm sorry to use that word, but macro and meso levels.
And you mentioned students as staff, and I will give a shout out to my crew because I would not be able to do my job without my student interns. And I have benefited from hiring one of those students into a temporary position after she graduated. And that was a great experience, I think, for both of us. It was a bridge for her, but obviously a huge, tremendous help for me. While we're talking about students, while we're welcoming them back for fall quarter, which is happening now, move-in is currently underway, what can you share about modifications to campus to protect the health and safety of student-facing staff and other staff who are working on site?
We've tried to ensure that we've provided our staff with the appropriate personal protective equipment. So well before the county decided everybody had to wear a mask, at least in RMP, particularly those that were here working, were required to wear a mask. And we provided the mask, and we also laundered them because they were reusable. So I think the PPE has been addressed, but having said that, I also know that the discussions tend to shift and change. So we stay abreast of what the latest and greatest is, and we really try to make sure that our staff benefit from the best practices that are out there. So we have a campus research machine shop that is working with the Med Center, and they've done some really interesting devices to split the ventilators. So you can have 2 to 4 patients on a ventilator rather than just one. And they've developed the little keys where you don't have to touch things. So we're distributing those types of things across the campus. Face shields. Face shields are a good opportunity to inhibit the transmission of the virus impacting eyes, but you really do have to have a mask on also to get the droplets and most importantly the aerosols. So we have tried to make sure our folks have the latest in personal protective equipment, and it's at our expense. Across the campus too, we've had a number of folks who've been, we call them encounters, and we have our residential security officers who are security folks, they're not police officers, and they've been patrolling the campus since we shut down, lockdown, and they've had, I think, encounters with about 2,800 people, no citations issued. People who they encountered were asked to put on a mask, given a mask, and most complied. We had one or two that said, it's my constitutional right, and they have a right not to wear a mask, but they just can't do it here. So that's part of the process. And if someone has a disability that's verifiable, they are being told that they should work with the Office of Students with Disabilities if they're a student, and then with Melissa Williams in HR if they're faculty, if they're a staff member. So I think that we've done a lot with the personal protective equipment. We continue to enhance it. Our cleaning has certainly gone from, you know, cleaning a little bit to cleaning a lot, and then sanitizing as well. So we're trying to be as adaptable as possible to ensure that we embrace the appropriate science.
People are interested in hearing about, maybe many people are not aware, but the Early Childhood Education Center falls under resource management planning. And so we have some people that are interested in knowing if MCDC and ECEC will be resuming operations.
Yeah, thanks for that question. That's also something that's on our website. Their ECEC, MCDC, and maybe some expanded service in terms of a school age, we'll call it camp, for lack of a better term. We have to get some permits for that, but for our initial programs, they're looking at opening the end of the month, maybe the first couple of days in October. So the staff, the faculty and teachers are back, setting up the classrooms and cleaning. We did some rehabs because of the social distancing requirement. We can only have up to 10 children in a pod with 2 dedicated teachers. And you can have more, but you have to have dedicated teachers. So we modified space. The children have these really cute little bathrooms, so you had to modify the bathrooms, and we've done a lot of that, so that quite candidly, we served close to 300 children, give or take. I think it was 285, and we're only going to be able to serve 100 children, because of the social distancing requirements. So we're looking at alternatives, and I know that the knock-around camps through REC were done this summer. They're looking at doing something through the fall. So ECEC plans to open by the beginning of October, limited number of children, and we'll see what we can do with getting the permits for enhanced grade school camp. Can't call it school.
So you had mentioned with the PPE that a lot of it has, if not all of it, has come at our expense. What savings are we seeing in connection to the greater number of staff that are working remotely?
I wish I could say, oh, we've seen a lot of savings, but we haven't, because, you know, if you think about our expenses, the greatest expense this institution has is its salaries. And if you also notice, there haven't been many reductions in force or layoffs. There were some temporary in housing and dining, and there may have been some 1 or 2 that were more business related rather than COVID. So our salaries continue. And I could have talked about savings in energy, but because of what I mentioned with 100% outside fresh air, we're just running the fans flat out to make sure that those systems are as clean as possible. So we're not saving money there. And even our cleaning of our building systems, you know, if you think about it, buildings were never designed to be closed or not used for 6 or 7 months at a time. So you have plumbing systems that lay dormant and no water's running through it. But if you've got copper pipes and the solder that holds the pipes together, often has lead, and that can leach out. So we've been running our systems and cleaning them out to ensure that there's no extra bacteria and no lead. So our cleaning, particularly building systems, has become extremely advanced, and it's close to what we would be doing in the medical centers, where they have a higher level of sanitation in particular, and some of their systems, we've changed out filters as an example in the air handlers. Expensive, but we realize we've got to do it for our faculty and staff. So I would love to be able to say, yeah, we saved all of this, but we really haven't.
So we have just 5 minutes left. The time has flown by. It's, I guess, needless to say, it's been a stressful few months for many of us. What do you think that staff can do to support each other and to keep each other safe and healthy?
Well, wear your mask, do the social distancing. If you don't feel well, stay home. As much as I appreciate those that power through it, stay home, please. Don't want your germs. And I think most importantly, what I failed to discuss, and I should have earlier, is everybody needs a mentor. And I was successful throughout my career because I had a mentor. I think now more than ever, people need someone who is a mentor. Now, that doesn't mean that they're your official mentor and they wear the I'm a mentor tag, as much as if you can interact with someone who can give you some guidance or discussion of skills, or even talk to them about where we're headed. Not that any of us really know where we're headed. We're just guessing. It's the crystal ball. But I think it's important to have support at all levels. And yes, I think we do have to support each other. I have to be candid. The last 6 or 7 months have been fairly easy compared to the last couple of weeks, where certain people are coming back to the campus. I want this, I want that, I want this. Got to chill. Just take it easy. We'll get there. And if there's something that's out of whack or remiss, by all means, let us know. But you know, for a while, literally there was a letter of demand every week, and I don't respond well to demands. I like to tell people that it's an opportunity. Tell me what the opportunity is that I've either missed or can address, but don't tell me you're going to demand. So I had one the other day demanding that FM, facilities management, make sure to keep the restrooms clean. We'll do our best. You got to do your best too. And so it's got to be a community effort to keep each other safe and to keep everything that we're doing as clean as possible, because without cleanliness, I think we are all in for a time. I had a discussion with San Diego State yesterday about their concerns and what they've done, and we're miles ahead of them, but it doesn't mean that we can't also end up with the same number if our students aren't careful. So it's really about the human condition. So technology is great, but when you add people in, that's when it kind of shifts, because you can't control people, and certainly the control of our students is not there. So I think everybody's got to help each other and chill a little bit. If something's not right, just let us know. Don't send me a letter of demand. And now I'm sure I'm going to get 10, but that's okay.
I think you started out by saying having patience, so we'll go with that. And you did mention community. How can we build community and stay connected in this environment with so many of us working remotely versus
that's a great question. I think I've participated in a number of activities. The Black Staff Association and a couple of other groups across the campus really put on some great sessions, and one was labeled Healing, and it gave people an opportunity to talk about things that they were concerned about. So, you know, throughout the summer, Black Lives Matter, and I know they do, and when you hear the concerns of people, they're valid concerns about the health and safety. Mothers who are afraid that their sons, no matter what age, can go out and not come home. So I do think that we need to support each other and kind of cross to hear what the other person is involved with, and most importantly, what they're feeling, because I think that's important for us to understand the collective impact that COVID has had. And I wish I could tell you we're about to come out of it, but I'm not there. I think we've got a long period of time, and it may be another year before. I'll put it this way: I won't give you a diagnosis or prognosis of how long, but I think the world will be different. So I hear people saying, well, when we go back, we're not going back. We're going to be ahead in some way. So I think it's important for us to work with each other, to communicate. There are a couple of folks that I know are on the call who send me information. As a faculty member in sociology who sends us information about masks and his theories on why people and who's wearing masks and who's not. And those are the things that are greatly appreciated, because it's not a complaint as much as here's a potential solution. So I mentioned earlier, working with the best of the best. You all are the best of the best. Send us your suggestions. I read my own email, and I'm open. My email, some of you know, gcmattAtws @UC San Diego or ucsd.edu. I think it's important for us to support each other and to communicate what we're feeling, and most importantly, what suggestions are to make things better.
Thank you so much. We actually are out of time, but if you want to add anything else, I'm sure we can squeeze it in.
Well, I'm happy to have joined you. I wasn't able to respond to one of the questions on the chat. I don't know how you're going to address those, but I'd be happy to respond to them, I guess, through the recording, if given the opportunity. So I wish everybody safe, healthy, stay healthy, keep your masks on, and vote, please vote.
So we are encouraging anyone who has questions to attend the town hall on Thursday, where Gary will be a panelist. So perhaps we can get your question answered then. We do appreciate everyone joining us today. And we do have an upcoming session. So look to our staff association website for upcoming cabinet conversations. We also have a social session tomorrow. Tomorrow's Wednesday. We have a social session tomorrow with the incoming manager of the Craft Center at the North Torrey Pines Living Learning Neighborhood, Annika Nelson. At 12, she will be showing us how to make a desk forest. So if you're interested in that, again, go to the Staff Association website. And I will just put another plug in, as Gary had mentioned, of us staying connected. We have a lot of affiliate groups, staff affiliate groups on our campus. One happens to be the Black Staff Association. Mine is the Staff Sustainability Network. There are about 8 others. And it's an opportunity for you to get engaged and to stay connected to other staff in an area that is of interest to you. So one more time, staffassociation.ucsd.edu. You can find a lot of great information there about these opportunities. Thank you, Vice Chancellor Matthews. It was great seeing you and great speaking with you. I do miss you.
Miss you too. Miss everybody. We'll be back together someday. I won't say soon, but someday. Thanks all.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.